understand the Hunters Point Shipyard project and what's at stake, it's important to have some background on the history of redevelopment in San Francisco. The San Francisco Redevelopment Agency, SFRA, was established in 1948 and introduced the idea of urban renewal to San Francisco. The agency's goal was to reduce urban blight and help the city grow economically. The head of SFRA from 1951 to 1971 was Justin Herman, who's largely responsible for the Yerba Buena Center project in south of Market District and the redevelopment of the Western Addition, or Fillmore. The Yerba Buena Center was designated in 1953 as a redevelopment area, and the project was established in 1966. The project focused on a new conference center, park, and housing developments, but large areas of the existing housing needed to be torn down, which caused tension in the community. The agency used the power of eminent domain to come in and destroy anything they labeled as blighted, regardless of who was living there. Not only did they keep people out of their homes, but they also did not provide adequate relocation housing for the people who were displaced. The residents of the area were not well informed about the plans, and some joined a group called Tenants Against Owners Opposed to the Redevelopment, TOR, in order to defend themselves. The battle was brought to the courts, but Justin Herman and the SFRA fought back to protect their project and potential profits. The project ran into some obstacles in the late 60s and early 70s with money issues, lawsuits, problems with plans, and its progress was stalled as a result of Herman's death in 1971. Eventually some compromises were made with the residents, and the construction really got underway in the 80s and continued into past 2001. Some argue that the end result was overall successful, but the process was dominated by the empowered and wealthy, and was an example of how redevelopment can go badly. The Western Addition was first designated a redevelopment area in 1948. The construction was carried out in the late 1950s and early 1960s, right around the same time as the Yerba Buena Center. The stated goal was to improve the buildings and streetscape, attract new business and residents, and overall improve the area. The community was primarily working-class African American and Asian families, but it was a vibrant neighborhood full of culture. Unfortunately, the SFRA pushed thousands of households out of the neighborhood and demolished hundreds of historic Victorian houses. Many residents were furious about the redevelopment, and there was lots of controversy about the idea of racial cleansing because of the primarily minority community. Similarly to the Yerba Buena project, the SFRA came into the area to do what they wanted, without any involvement from the community. Now the area is nothing like it was before, with high-rise housing projects, fast food restaurants, and a posh jazz club. This was just another example of how SFRA, and specifically Justin Herman, can abuse their power so that the city and people who control it can profit. Because of the history, it's no wonder why so many are skeptical about the Bayview Hunters Point redevelopment. But the negative history of redevelopment in San Francisco acts as a lesson for the SFRA. The city and redevelopment agency cannot afford to mess up again, and the history helps make sure that they don't. The Bayview Hunters Point area has historically been occupied by the Navy. The toxicity of the Navy shipyard at Hunters Point is proof of the destruction they wreaked on the neighborhood. The Great Migration of the 1940s sent a vast number of African Americans from the South to look for jobs in the West. The people found work at Hunters Point Naval Shipyard, which employed up to 17,000 people at one time. Because of World War II, jobs were abundant at the shipyard until 1974, when the Navy closed the shipyard. The employment at Hunters Point is what originally attracted a significant number of people to the area. Most of the population that currently lives in Bayview Hunters Point neighborhoods are descendants of those migrant families. Hunters Point has become a largely industrial neighborhood, due in part to its roots in the shipyard. It contains only 1/3 of San Francisco's toxic waste sites, and there's a strong correlation between the toxicity of the neighborhood and the serious health problems that persist in the community. Many industrial businesses help to create the hazardous environment in Hunters Point, such as the San Francisco Municipal Asphalt Plant, the Southeast Wastewater Treatment Plant, Darling International, a company that recycles unused animal parts, and PG&E Power Plant. The PG&E Power Plant closed in 2006 due to the strong petitioning of the neighborhood residents. This marked a huge success for the Hunters Point community and shows their ability to prevail over large corporations. Because of the enormous amount of industry and toxic waste in this neighborhood, there are strong arguments for environmental injustice on the primarily African American and low-income residents that live there. In addition, crime, murder, drug, and gang violence plague this area of the city. When the San Francisco Redevelopment Agency announced their plans to start a project in the Bayview Hunters Point neighborhood, it took various offers and ended up choosing the Lennar Corporation as the major developer. Lennar was the only real option because it is one of the few multi-billion-dollar development firms in the world, and the only one interested in the project. Community groups such as CAC and PAC, respectively, the Citizens Advisory Committee and the Project Area Committee, were founded to put community input into the plans. They worked for years with the Redevelopment Agency, Lennar, and the City of San Francisco to make a redevelopment plan that everyone could agree on. The plan they came up with includes a multi-use stadium for the 49ers, but also allows for a version of the plan to be completed without the stadium if the 49ers choose to move to Santa Clara. It specifies that there will be plenty of multi-use property and open space, as well as amenities such as an African marketplace and commercial businesses. Included in the plans are a few aspects that are clearly included to please people who do not want to see their neighborhood change too much. These include limits on the length of blocks, so that the new area will replicate the layout of existing surrounding neighborhoods. The inclusion of affordable housing has been a part of the plan that was important in order not to exclude any of the residents of the current Bayview Hunters Point community. We learned from Supervisor Chris Daly about his opinion that current and confusing number of either 25 or 30% affordable housing in the plans is not sufficient. Daly claims that even if the plans allowed for 60% affordable housing, not even taking low-income housing into account, that there would still be demand from the current community. The plans create a completely new neighborhood with parks, housing, and the spark of economic life for the whole project: business. The neighborhood will eventually have what Willie Brown says is necessary for a neighborhood: a variety of different kinds of businesses. These changes will hopefully create something almost entirely different from what's in the area now, and will be modern and unquestionably gentrified. At this point, when looking at the plans, the big if needs to be reconsidered. All of the aspects of the 10,000-unit redevelopment and the multi-use property rely on the Navy's successful cleanup of the toxins in the area. The community's response to the project has been mixed. Some residents of the area are concerned that the redevelopment project will push people out of the neighborhood and contribute to the rapid decline of the African American population in the area. But according to the District 10 Supervisor, Sophie Maxwell, the city and a redevelopment agency are working closely with representatives of the community to make sure that their needs are met. Because of the extent of the CAC's involvement, we are confident that many community needs are being taken into consideration and the communication between the people of the Bayview Hunters Point neighborhood and the city is strong. Obviously, there's going to be people against the project, but we believe that the majority stand behind it and are working hard to make sure they're satisfied with the outcome. After careful consideration and interviews with both city officials and community leaders, we have decided that the San Francisco redevelopment project of the Bayview Hunters Point neighborhood is a good idea and will have many beneficial impacts both for the residents of the neighborhood and the people of San Francisco as a whole. Although there are legitimate concerns related to the project, such as gentrification and environmental contamination of the area, we believe that these concerns are being appropriately addressed in the redevelopment process, and the final project will be a success. Because San Francisco is a growing city, something must be done with this currently vacant and unused land. From an economic standpoint, the city needs the land in order to facilitate the growing population and business opportunities.